I'm talking about. All right, let's give it up for Paseo Streetwalkers one more time. Thank you so much for lifting our spirits today while we're learning about human rights at the world's longest lasting human rights music festival. I'm not kidding, 27 years, 1986. Some college students got together and said, let's bring some art into the park. Let's just go do it. Let's just do it. So they did, and about 50 friends showed up, and then one was a musician who said, let's do this again and I'll bring my band. And another one said, I'm part of Amnesty International and we need to sign some petitions. Do you think we could come too? And then in the spring, they did it again, and they had 3 bands, and they got more signatures than they ever dreamed of, and then they did it again, and then it was twice a year for many, many years, minus some rain, and now it's in the fall, and we are continuing with our 51st Groovefest today, so thank you all so much for coming out. I'm really grateful to you and our sponsors and all these vendors that want to be here and share what they're creating and what they're hoping to communicate to you about human rights. And Norman actually is a great community for human rights. We have more social service organizations in our little population than across the state. One girl told me Norman's like the Fern Gully of Oklahoma, which I like to think so. Born and raised here. I know we have some work to do, but this is a great place to learn about how you can help. And looking at our next speaker, I hope that you'll welcome a friend of Groovefest for many years, Normanite from the heart, a theater student, a teacher at OU, bringing arts to the students, but also now a poet. And I think he's got words of wisdom, some art for us to consider, and I hope it reaches you. I hope you'll welcome Woody.
Thank you, guys. This is Art Americana. The Art Americana. We take the sharp biting pain, the boiling veins of outrage, infuse them into words, into swords that cut thin slices of black ink across the pale white face of page after page after canvas, after sound, that bludgeons its way through the tortured chords of the voice, to the deaf ear, to the blind eye, to the heart that no longer feels its own blood pumping, its own thoughts curdling and dying, and with every lie, they strangle from the truth. Honesty turned to steel-toed, rail-splitting logic, hatred pounding great highways, rising up and over, stomping out the life where once God wept the open fields and the forest dark and damp and lakes filled with fishermen and children playing on the banks. And we, Art Americana, we can be beaten down to mud, or stand like stone, or flash like thunder in the darkest storm, or we can force the day to rise, the sun to come forth and shine on everyone with all the force of our words, the wet bristles of paintbrushes, the rhythm of sounds woven into song. Yes, we can change it all, bring it all back to where it belongs, without raising one fist, without swinging the knife, without drawing a gun or spilling the blood. We can give it all back to who it belongs. Art Americana. Thank you, guys.
All right, so, Groovefest, it takes a community. And these guys got together in high school, and I think they've played Groovefest 2 or 3 times already. I want you to welcome Bungalooski.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was Tadpole.
Somebody's always going to do what they're
about human rights today, I hope you'll do that soon, because as the sun sets, they leave, and then you missed out. But I wanted to tell you a little story because we've got a really unique speaker coming up. My first Groovefest was when I was 16. And then over the years, I couldn't always be here, but when I had a moment, I would at least show up to buy my t-shirt and sign the petition at the Amnesty International table, because somehow I felt like if that's what they really needed, and that was all I could do, then, and talk about human rights with others, then that's what I would do. And so through the years, we've really tried to make sure that Amnesty International is still part of Groovefest. And they're here. If you haven't been to learn about what Amnesty International does internationally and locally regarding poverty, education, healthcare, and incarceration, and human rights in Oklahoma, then please check it out. But really, Groovefest was started by a handful of OU students, artists, musicians, and activists from the OU chapter of Amnesty International. Just a few people created Groovefest, and it has continued for 27 years, and this is the 51st Groovefest, because community, and I see them here, my friends are all smattered around here. Everybody here has had a part somehow in Groovefest, whether contributing or volunteering or really organizing it. And it's really just you and I. It's no, and there's just a few. So I really hope that if you want to be a part of keeping this alive, that you will get to know us and volunteer and join the committees and the organizations, whether it's arts or music or PR. I really hope that you'll continue that, because that's really what it takes to keep it alive. And sadly, I've just learned that the OU chapter for Amnesty International isn't right now. And so that's unfortunate. So that really concerns me. How are the OU students learning about human rights? What are their resources? And we do actually have a lot of organizations, but not Amnesty International organizations. There is one in the city. OKC Amnesty International is here. I hope you'll visit their table, but they've brought a speaker today to bring some awareness, and I hope you'll really stay put and listen up. Ali Agee.
Yeah, of course. Hello, my name is Ali Agee. I am the student area coordinator for Amnesty International, which means that I get to work with all of the student groups in Oklahoma and help support them and kind of help them develop their chapters. And it's a job that I really, really love, but it's a job that makes me sad every day because we only have 2 student groups in Oklahoma. If you're a student at a university and you are passionate about human rights, I would encourage you to get in contact with Amnesty International, because we really need to build up our student groups. Amnesty International is the largest grassroots human rights organization in the world. They're stationed in over 150 countries and have over 3 million members worldwide. Some of the things that they do is they promote women's rights, LGBTQ rights. They are very active in the abolishment of the death penalty and the elimination of drones. So I'm here today to speak on behalf of Amnesty International, but I also think that as a senior in college, I'm here to speak on behalf of young people in Oklahoma and what we see about human rights in our state. A little bit of background about me. I'm from a really small town in the northeastern part of the state where every 3rd Saturday of the month they turn off the town's single stoplight so they can host a square dancing festival. I really like my hometown. It has a lot of character. It's where I grew up and where I learned some of the most important lessons in my life, like how to care about other people and that everyone's family and you should treat them as such. Unfortunately, it's also where I learned some of the most heartbreaking and real lessons in my life too. When I was a senior in high school, my little sister came out. Everyone, including my family and my church community, was really disappointed in her and thought they could save her or that they could change her, said that it was just a phase. I grew up in a fairly liberal household, so seeing my parents change everything they had taught me because of one detail about my sister was really heartbreaking to me. And I didn't really know how to feel about it. But then one day I was at this football game in the bleachers with the band in the flute section. And my little sister walked in with her girlfriend. They weren't doing anything that would make them stand out as a couple. They weren't holding hands. But everyone knew it's a small town. And all of my friends started whispering about her and pointing at her. And they said to me, "Aren't you ashamed of your little sister? Aren't you embarrassed that she's here right now?" And I just remember looking at her and saying, "No, I'm not. I'm actually really proud of my little sister." 2 years later, when I was a senior, I started to lead the prayer circle in front of the football games because that's the type of thing you do in a small town. The senior pastor at one of the churches in town had to sit down with the principal and told him that unless they found a male to lead the circle and take my place, the entire church was going to stop coming to the games. My principal called me into his office and asked me to find a guy to lead the circle because members in the community just didn't feel comfortable with a woman praying over their boys. To that, I also said no. You see, it's that one little word, no, that makes all the difference for human rights and social justice work. When conservatives across the nation decided that it was time to turn back 30 years of reproductive choice, groups like Amnesty International and OCRJ raised their voices in opposition and said firmly, no. When the state of Georgia refused to reconsider the case of Troy Davis, Amnesty International and groups like the NAACP were there to put their foot down, saying no and demanding justice. As the United States and the Obama administration continue to refuse to close Guantanamo Bay and stop the torture of hundreds of inmates, Amnesty International has been there at every turn, saying no and demanding justice. And when Herman Wallace was diagnosed with liver cancer, Amnesty International was there to say, no, this man will not die in solitary confinement. And when a young Pakistani girl was shot on a bus for bravely defying her country's denial of education for women, Amnesty International and millions of voices around the world spoke up and said no with her. Because that's what human rights activism is all about. Raising your voice in opposition to injustice and then doing something about it. Whether it's with Amnesty International or any of the other justice organizations here today, I would encourage you to find something that you care about and stand firmly on the side of justice and human rights. I could read a lot of statistics to you today about the state of human rights in Oklahoma, and that was my original plan, but I don't think that's what's needed. You see, we live here. We know the state of human rights in Oklahoma. We experience it every single day. Human rights activism and saying no comes from deep down. It's that gut reaction to something we see or hear. We've all had it. I'm here today to tell you that you are not alone, that there are 3 million and counting Amnesty International members feeling that sense of opposition and doing something about it. So let's have the confidence to say no in Oklahoma. Let's say no to the fact that Oklahoma has the highest number of incarcerated women in the nation. And let's say no to the statistics that show that we're one of the hot spots in the world for human child sex trafficking. Let's say no to the denial of benefits for the spouses of LGBT soldiers. And let's say no to the fact that 1/4 of the children in Oklahoma live in poverty. Let's get out there and start ensuring that human rights happen in our state, in the small towns and the big cities. Let's get out there and say no over and over again until we feel that our state is where it should be. Let's say no in Oklahoma, because I think if we do, we have a pretty good chance of winning this fight for human dignity and human rights. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Todd and the Wild Frontier Band. It's great to be here at Andrews Park. Please stay away from the moat. The dragon will eat you. Man, I don't know about you guys, but about a year ago, I was really bummed the day that I woke up and discovered that I was a Capricorn. All of a sudden, I was no longer an Aquarius. I've been raised to be an Aquarius, to say Aquarius things and do Aquarian things, and now all of a sudden I'm supposed to be a Capricorn and say Capricorn things, and existential crisis because, let me tell you something, you can take away a lot of things away from me, but you better not take away my control. Tiny, and we're not where we are. Go to bed early, wake up reborn. Happy birthday, baby, you're a Capricorn. Don't take my control. Don't take my control. Don't take my control. You got to let it go. No, 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 no. Do, 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 do. Tell me pretty please, when will we ever get a logical reprise? 'Cause I wanna see it when the tables turn on you. When up is down and right is wrong, you gotta change your point of view. Don't take my control. Don't take my control. Don't take my control. You got to let it go. Don't take my control. Don't you go take my control. Don't take my control. You got to let it go. With the wave of a hand and the stroke of a pen, they'll rearrange our lives again. Oh, no, it's not a planet. The sun is just a star. The universe is tiny, and we're not where we are.